This video is brought to you by our new show, The Daily Briefing. That's the show where we go through the 5 most important news stories each day, giving you a rundown of everything you need to know around the world in a matter of minutes. Watch on the separate TLDR Daily YouTube channel or listen by searching in your favourite podcast app. And if you are watching the Daily Briefing already, then you'll have heard yesterday that Russia is refocusing its war efforts in Donbas, a region which has seen tension between Russian and Ukrainian forces since 2014. So in this video, we're going to run through the latest developments, Russia's plan for the war and the region, and why Putin is trying to capture this region of Ukraine at the expense of everything else. I think we're all getting pretty familiar with the geography of Ukraine, but let me give you a really quick overview to get everyone up to speed. This is Donbas, an area in the east of Ukraine, which used to be a major coal and steel producing area. Donbas itself contains 2 regions, both of which border Russia, Donetsk and Luhansk. In part due to their historic ties and proximity to Russia, these regions are more associated with Russia than the rest of Ukraine, with things like higher approval ratings for Russia and more people speaking Russian than anywhere else in the country. As such, it's pretty widely agreed that the Kremlin has long considered the region as more a part of Russia than a part of Ukraine. In fact, even before the war, Russian separatists controlled about a third of Donbas, this section right here, which, unsurprisingly, borders Russia. They didn't hold this area peacefully though. Since 2014, there's been a violent 8-year war between Russian separatists and Ukrainian forces in the region. Naturally, tensions have escalated significantly since the end of February, when Russia first properly invaded the country. Within just a month, Russia claimed to have captured 93% of Luhansk and 54% of Donetsk. But to this day, Putin hasn't been able to capture the region entirely, despite continued efforts. But Putin seems keen to change this, and as we detailed in our previous videos, since the beginning of April, Russia has refocused its military campaign on Donbas. Having failed to take Kyiv or make much progress in the south since early March, Putin has been forced to scale down his objectives, and the Russian army is now focusing almost exclusively on Donbas in the east. On March 25th, Russia's first deputy chief of staff claimed that the first phase of the invasion was over, which apparently involved attacking Kyiv to limit Ukraine's military capacity in Donbas. And by April 5th, Russian forces were nearly completely gone from northern Ukraine, and more Russian forces than ever had been deployed to Donbas. For the next 2 weeks, the Russian army basically just stopped, resupplying and regrouping in the area. In fact, on April 18th, US intelligence estimated that Russia now had 64 battalion tactical groups, or BTGs, deployed in Ukraine, up from 53 at the beginning of the month. For those of you who don't know, BTGs are the Russian army's combined armed maneuver units, which usually comprise between 600 and 800 soldiers, accompanied by roughly 10 tanks and 40 infantry fighting vehicles. The same US intelligence briefing estimated that 12 BTGs were still tied down in Mariupol, where the Ukrainian army continues to put up resistance. This meant that all in all, Russia probably had slightly more than 50,000 troops in and around Donbas, which means that the Russian forces are unlikely to significantly outnumber the Ukrainian army, who had about 40,000 troops in the area before the war, a number which is only expected to have risen given the extra voluntary capacity that the Ukrainian army has taken on. Okay, so that's how things have evolved throughout the month, but everything kicked off properly on Monday evening, when Russia relaunched airstrikes in nearly every region of Ukraine, including Kyiv and Lviv, although the shelling was apparently heaviest in Kharkiv and Mykolaiv. And there were also reports of intense shelling on the Ukrainian positions in Donbas. Just a few hours later, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced that what he called Phase 2 of Russia's special military operation had officially begun. The Ukrainian army then reported intensified Russian ground attacks around towns in the north of Donetsk, as well as coming from the west of Luhansk, which is basically the only part of Luhansk that's yet to be taken by the Russian army. Luhansk's governor stated that Russian forces were able to capture Crimea, but had failed to make any significant gains elsewhere in the region. Further north, Ukrainian forces staged successful counteroffensives in the southeast of Kharkiv, with Ukrainian forces then successfully moving westwards. There were also reports of Ukrainian counteroffensives to the west of Izium, then pushing up further in the region. Most analysts think that Ukrainians are now trying to encircle the Russian forces at Izium, which would limit Russia's ability to perform the much-anticipated pincer movement around Ukrainian forces in Donbas. Russia apparently has about 22 BTGs in and around Izium, which would amount to about a third of its total force in the area. Therefore, the entire Russian force pretty much relies on supplies shipped from Belgorod. So if Ukrainian forces can interrupt their supply lines, they'll effectively be able to incapacitate a significant fraction of the Russian army. In summary, Russia has begun its much-anticipated Donbas offensive, but hasn't yet made significant gains, while Ukrainian forces have successfully staged counterattacks around Izium. So what happens next? Well, things don't look that great for Russia. If US intelligence is to be believed, then Russia only has a maximum of 60,000 troops in Donbas, definitely not enough to guarantee victory. Traditionally, military analysts assume a defending force has a 3-to-1 advantage over an attacker, which means that Russia would need more than twice as many troops to match the 40,000 defending Ukrainians. Numbers aside, whether Russia can pull this off will depend on three things, with the first one being Mariupol. If the Russian army can successfully take Mariupol, then that will free up some 10,000 spare troops to help out in the rest of Donbas. The second front is Izium. As we just mentioned, 22 Russian BTGs are currently stationed there. So if Ukrainians can cut off their supplies from Belgorod, or even encircle them, then Russia's army will be seriously depleted. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly though, are logistics. As we detailed in other videos, the Russian army has been beset by logistical problems. Before the invasion even began, military experts estimated that Russia would struggle for supplies any further than 90 miles from their nearest supply dump. And the Ukrainians know this, which is why they've consistently targeted Russian supply trucks. It's no coincidence then that so far, the Russian army has struggled to occupy territory further than 90 miles from the Russian or Crimean border, at any point in the conflict, at any point on the border. So if the Russians want to take all of Donbas, they'll need to significantly improve their logistics operations. All in all, things don't look great for Putin here on all three fronts. But this is a good and a bad thing for Ukraine. While it does make a conventional Russian victory less likely, it also increases the chances of some sort of non-conventional escalation, like a tactical nuke or chemical weapons attack. So, if you want to be updated on this story, how the Russian assault on Donbas plays out, then be sure to check out the Daily Briefing. That's our new daily show where we explain 5 news stories every single day. We pick out the big stories, the ones you ought to know about, but we also choose some smaller ones that you might otherwise miss. So if you want to be better informed about the world around you and news from all over the globe, then you really ought to subscribe. And it's only a few minutes each day, so what do you have to lose? We post a video version every weekday over on the TLDR Daily channel, so you can subscribe over there. Or you can listen along to the podcast by searching for the TLDR Daily Briefing in your favourite podcast app. Thanks for your support, and I hope you enjoy the new show.